Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Bora with another video today. Obviously, we are 1 week away from Season 2 of Project Diablo 2. I think everybody is super excited. A lot of people have been kind of sitting and waiting for this to happen. And yeah, I mean, I've been playing the closed beta. It's been a lot of fun. Been checking out the new character reworks, like the martial arts assassin, the whirlwind barb, all that kind of stuff. I know a lot of people have been really heavily testing on the closed beta to try to push new builds to the limit, see what they can do. So really excited to see what some of the other people come up with. But today I just want to talk about the weapon changes, and specifically, I'm going to try to call out the ones that should matter to you. The patch notes are extremely long, so for those who don't want to read those or scrutinize them, then this video is obviously for you. So I'm just going to call out a couple of themes that I saw in the item reworks, and that is there's a lot of buffs. Specifically, there's a lot of early to mid ladder buffs. So like items like Eagle Horn, for instance. Like if you're trying to be a Boson, it's not a huge buff, but it's a buff nonetheless. It went from 25 dex to 25 to 40. So that extra 15 dex, I mean that's an extra 15% enhanced damage, might carry you through Nightmare a little bit easier. And so there's a lot of those types of buffs, like those kind of mid-game items, like Whiz Spike. Whiz Spike got 50% requirement reduction, which prior the dexterity requirement was prohibitive for a lot of builds because like an early to mid-game sorceress isn't going max block, doesn't want to invest a ton in dexterity. Now you have Whiz Spike, and you can even further put a Hell Rune in it, and you probably don't really need to invest anything in dexterity. But anyway, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the early to mid game buffs because, as we know, the early to mid ladder goes by very quickly. Even within 3 weeks, even if you're a casual player, you probably have some form of endgame items, not necessarily the best corruption with the best jewels and all that kind of stuff, where some people will be there. But maybe you have, that endgame item with a low roll or with one open socket, but it's still viable. So the early to mid ladder does go by very quickly. So I'm going to focus primarily on the later and like endgame type item buffs or changes that have happened. They've also really reworked a lot of items to support the new rework. So, as you know, the martial arts assassin can now use daggers. So they made a lot of changes to daggers, for instance, and they added a lot of like plus poison skills because that supports the martial arts assassin. They, for the weapons that had kind of like a chance to proc something, Bone Spear or Fisher or something like that, they increase those chances and those levels because that supports the Whirlwind Barb, who now procs, who can now proc while they whirlwind. So if something, for instance, if you were to whirlwind last season and your weapon had chance to cast amplify damage and you whirlwind, it would not work. Now in season 2, that will work. So anything that has kind of a chance to proc, that most of those items have been buffed, and that's obviously because they're really trying to push this new kind of whirlwind rework. They've also increased the floor of a lot of items, and what I mean by that is they've made the worst roll better. And I have a couple of examples to show you of that, so we'll get into that. They've also increased a lot of top end rolls, and sometimes in those situations they've made the floor worse, but the ceiling better, which is pretty interesting. So we'll see how some of those things go. Not a ton of nerfs, but the things that kind of needed to be nerfed, and we'll get into some of those, like the Dragon Den needed to be nerfed. It got nerfed through items and through a number of other reworks, but we'll touch on that later. And I think before we really dive in, just want to say it's very hard, until all these weapons are used, it's very hard to know which ones matter the most. There are some extremely creative people out there like Lucky Luciano who he's the declone Slayer, and he comes out with crazy builds all the time. So, some people like that are going to get really creative, and they're going to bring to light some buff that nobody else was really looking at, and we'll see what happens there. Anyway, let's start looking at some items. So first of all, I'll just start with this because you guys know that I love Tyrael's Might. I can't believe they buffed it. And honestly, guys, if my early season luck is anything like it has been in this open beta, I got this 3 open socket slam on my second attempt. This one I got on my first attempt. Just I've had some crazy luck in this open beta. So, So this is another example. They actually made the floor and the ceiling better. So the damage to demons and damage to undead used to range between 70 to 120. Now it's 100 to 150. So this is an interesting one because last season I kept having the conversation about, okay, 3 open socket Tyraels is hands down better than Fortitude for a lot of the the PVM build. So, if you're playing any physical damage character, 3 open socket Tyrael's Might, because you can put, enhanced damage jewels in them and all that kind of stuff. Tyrael's Might was hands down better. When it came to 2 open socket, though, it was a little more debatable. Depended on kind of the role of your, when I say role, I mean, obviously the, where you landed in those parameters, so that 70 to 120. If you had a 70 damage to demons, then probably wasn't super strong, and that's where like Fortitude would have been better. Now with these new ceiling and floor, I think that a 2 open socket Tyrael's is probably just straight up better than Fortitude. So it'll be interesting to see how these builds get used, or how this item gets used. But I mean, I think it was already super popular last season. Can't believe they buffed it, and I guess we'll see how crazy the prices can get next ladder, because even towards the tail end of this ladder, it's been pretty insane. Anyway, I don't want to get too hung up on each item. I'm not going to go super in depth, but obviously Tyrael's Might, you guys know that I really push this item, and yeah. So this one is seemingly unimportant, but they did increase the enhanced damage on Faith Bow. Why I think this matters is because they're actively trying to fix the PvP scene. They've talked about some just blanket damage nerfs, at least 50% PvP damage reductions. And Faith is actually the bow of choice for a PvP zone. And maybe people think, well, Windforce, but you don't use a mercenary in PvP, and you can't hit the top IS breakpoint without fanaticism. So Faith will be the bow of choice for PvP, and I think it's just interesting that this got a buff and something to call out. Veil of Steel, again, this was another strong item last season that they've chosen to buff, and they've increased the floor of these items. So again, it used to be 20 to 60 enhanced damage, and it used to be 20 to 40 resistance. Now they've bumped it up to 25 to 40 resistance and 30 to 60 ED. So just those types of... actually, let me just confirm that's what happened. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Oh, it's actually 25. So I have found that in the open beta, some of these little tooltips are still wrong. So actually the max all res that you can get is 50 according to the patch notes that I have. Maybe they've nerfed it. I know they've been making nerfs throughout kind of the open beta, so maybe I just have old information. But either way, this is an item that they made the floor better. So still going to be super viable for those really top-end characters that can get away pulling off a Veil of Steel. Okay, so let's just start here. So Nightwing's Veil. Again, they made the ceiling better on this. The enemy cold res, they buffed, and I think they buffed the damage as well. And yes, so it was 6 to 12 damage. Now it is 5 to 11. So again, they just they made the best role better than it was last season, and this is interesting because it comes with a lot of other buffs to some cold builds, like the cold sorceress and cold Amazon. As far as I can tell, both got buffs. Frozen orb, obviously they removed the cooldown, they changed the FCR breakpoints, and it's pretty crazy. I don't know if you watched Senpai's stream the other day, but you can cast Frozen Orb at a very high level or a very high speed, and they increase the synergies. And now you have Nightwing's Veil that adds more damage and less enemy cold res. And so all told, like this, and Blizzard got buffed, and Ice Barrage got buffed, and all told, Cold Sources got a major buff. And I think Cold Amazons got a damage buff as well through their synergies. They got the cold damage addition, but the physical damage got reduced, is how I recall. Here's another one, guys. Crown of Ages now has 3 open sockets. I thought that this was an interesting one as well. Again, this item is so strong already. Why it needs 3 sockets, I don't really know, but there's a ton of potential to do really cool stuff. I mean, this is just an item that every single mod on it is good. Like, it's just, this item is ridiculous. And so looking forward to see what people do. I think for PvP, this is going to be an important item. Even that 1 extra slot gives you, opportunity to just put a Burr Rune in it, get 8% damage reduction. Maybe that gets you that 50% threshold. This is obviously a early to mid game item, but I think it's interesting. And guys, with early to mid game items, you can always up these items. So when I mean upgrade. Obviously, this is studded leather. You can turn it into trellised, and then you can turn it into whatever Gladiator's Bane armor type is. I can't quite recall at the moment, but either way, this is one is interesting because you can get 40 increased attack speed, and then on top of it, guys, like a studded leather can't get 3 sockets, but if you do upgrade it, especially if you upgrade it twice, that armor type can then get 3 sockets. So if you double up and then corrupt and you get 3 open socket, you have a pretty interesting armor here. Because I mean, look at the stat. Like look at the mods. 25% increased chance of blocking is massive. So if you have a max deck, if you have a max block build, I'm in my head right now. I'm struggling to think of an actual viable opportunity, but every mod is good on this armor, and that 40 IS plus 3 open sockets might be pretty interesting for some build. Atma's Whale. This again. I thought this armor was perfectly fine. It was used last season in a couple of builds, especially on some necromancers. Those that didn't really use Bramble, for instance, might use an Atma's Whale, and it's good for max block. Again, it's good for mana, and the buff here is the faster cast rate. So it had 20 last season, now it has 30. And again, with the corruption, you can get 10 more, or you can get +1 all skills. Then all of a sudden, you have a mega armor, right? And then with or you can corrupt 3 open sockets, or you can get one of those corruptions that I talked about before and puzzle it for 2 open sockets, and then you have a very, very strong armor. Storm Shield, they increased the PDR ceiling, so it used to cap out at 28, now it's 30. Again, one of those buffs that 2% PDR doesn't seem all that impactful. But it is. So, I mean, these things all end up mattering in the end. But, that was the only change to Storm Shield. But, yeah, anyway, I mean, they made a good item better. So, this one blows my mind. Senpai said on stream that Grandfather wasn't really used, and he couldn't figure out why. I think I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I mean, an Eth Grandfather is just incredibly rare. And, obviously, people are going to choose other weapons over a non-Eth Grandfather, but an Eth Grandfather was highly sought after in the last season, and now they've added this 3 to 5 war cries, which is obscene. I mean, you can dual wield these, and you get 2. You get +10 to war cries. You can even have these on Switch. With +1 all skills corruptions on it, like non-Eth, just to use like battle orders, battle command. and you can have plus 12, which is like just absolutely insane. So I don't know why this item got buffed, but it did, and that's where we are. So Aki, this is a early to mid game item that still has some value in the later stages of the game, but again, they made the floor better. So it used to be 1 to 3 sorcerer skills. Now it's 2 to 3, so you can't get really screwed on the roll as hard as you could earlier. And again, just helps you along in the early to mid game. And I think Aki is one of those items that's used pretty heavily in the first month of the ladder. That's why I wanted to call this one out. Ashudas, same thing. They made the floor better. The enemy resist used to range between -1 and 10. Now it's -4 and 10, so you can't get as bad of a roll. Shaft stop. They increased the PDR, which I don't know. That's an interesting one because this is good merc armor. It's good for PvP. And 30 PDR is just so much. Frees up a lot of not to digress too much, but when you do PvP, you want about 50% damage. Well, you want 50% physical damage reduction, and so having 30 on one item frees up another slot, for instance. So this is an interesting buff. It's also, like I said, good merc armor. Halberd's Reign. This was buffed as well. Same deal where they just increased the floor of this. Alma Negra. So this is interesting because back in Vanilla D2, this item had a bit of merit. Not so much on the PVM side of things, but they did make it much better. So they really increased the enhanced damage. They really increased the bonus attack rating. Let me just quickly look at my notes. It went from 40 to 75% bonus attack rating to 100 to 150, which is quite large. And it went from 70 to 125% enhanced damage to 150 to 200. So those are very big buffs, and I think that obviously this shield is going to have some merit. Specifically, I think for the PvP scene again, I think that this is going to be a pretty interesting item. For Herald of Zakram. So again, when I talked about the themes earlier, I said that they raised a lot of floors, they raised a lot of ceilings. This is one where they lowered the floor and raise the ceiling. So if you get a bad roll, it'll be worse than last ladder. If you get a good roll, it'll be better than last ladder, because they changed the stats on it. So that the strength and vitality used to just be a flat 20, and now it ranges from 15 to 30. So again, if you roll perfect, you're getting 20 extra stats compared to last season. So I think this is obviously a pretty big buff. This one I just have because it's +5 war cries. Enigma. This is a decent change. I think a lot of people were up in arms when they saw this, but for me, I don't think it's that big of a deal. The charges of teleport now replenish in 6 seconds as opposed to 8. So people are, I think, worried that the hammered in will come back or something like that. I don't think it's anything like that. 6 seconds per charges is still, pretty long. So I don't think that this is, it's a buff and it's nice. It helps. But I don't think it's like a game breaking buff by any means. So this is a pretty interesting one. Bows can now, and this was intended, I think, always, that you could corrupt max sockets on a bow. Last season it was bugged, so you could only get 4 open sockets. Now you can get 6. And this is interesting because while 6 sockets is not the best corruption, and to quantify that for you guys, you can obviously puzzle a bow for 4, and you can get that ED-IS hybrid mod. So that 20 increased attack speed you get is essentially -1 socket, because, like, for instance, you would have to put a shale in this bow just to get the same increased attack speed as a 4 open socket ED-IS corruption, and which leaves you with 1 additional socket, where on the 4 open socket you have 120 increased ED. You can't make that up with 1 socket. So it's still not the best, but this is going to be much easier to come by. And yeah, I mean, it's still super strong. Don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, a 6 open socket wind force is going to be pretty deadly. And I mean, honestly, just weirdly enough, when I was doing this, and maybe who knows, maybe I can show one cool instance where actually something cool happens on stream for me, and I don't blow every item up like I did in my Slam Fest. Um, like I actually got a ton of 5 and 6 open socket corruptions, and when I was playing around here, of course that's not going to happen now. Okay, anyway, let's not get too hung up on that. But I was getting a ton of 5 and 6 open socket Hydrobos, wind forces, and I mean that's going to be super super strong in that mid ladder while everybody waits for those godly corruptions to come out. A 6 open socket wind force is going to be incredible. So really looking forward to this. I'm not going to start next season with a boson, but I definitely will be building a boson next season, and I can't wait to try out a 6 open socket wind force. Just sounds awesome. Spirit. So this is an interesting one. They just gave it requirements -25, and this is pretty necessary because the only 4 open socket shield, the lowest strength requirement for open socket shield in the game is a Monarch, which requires 156 strength, which is prohibitive for a lot, if not all builds. Especially they made so many other items, so many other shields better, that nobody pays any attention to Spirit. Like for instance, Lidless is just they added another plus skill to it. Lidless is just strong. Why would you ever invest a ton of strength? And they nerfed Spirit because they used to have +2 skills. So why would you ever go for it? Now it only requires 117 strength, and it's still a great shield. So I think this one might come back to popularity a little bit. Will be interesting to see if this gets used in any builds. But I mean, you can't argue with 35 faster cast rate on a shield. Huge resist. Obviously, a lot of vitality and mana. Like every mod, this is another shield where every mod is fantastic, but it just wasn't super viable because of the strength requirement. They've lowered that, so we'll see if this gets incorporated into more builds. Now for a large nerf, this one, Gurky's Sanctuary. This has been buffed pretty heavily, nerfed, because they turned the physical damage reduction taken from a percentage, 8%, to flat. So, Gurks was just pretty strong. Again, like every mod on the shield is just incredible. And now this flat PDR is kind of bad. So they just basically took away one of the useful mods. I think it still has merit, and will probably be used in some builds, but we'll see. It'll be hard to tell. Chains of Honor also received a nerf, a small nerf, albeit again the tooltip is reading wrong here, but basically the resist on a Chains of Honor always used to be 65. Now it is a range between 40 and 60, which is, it is what it is. COH is pretty strong for a lot of caster builds. That it just allows them to forego resist on pretty much every other piece of their gear, because obviously with the Anya quest and with Chains of Honor and an Annie and a torch and all that kind of stuff, you're gonna be in the realm of max res, and so this is a fair nerf. I think if you get a good roll, you're not going to really notice the difference, but if you get a bad one, maybe you will. So just think twice about the COH Chains of Honor next season. But anyway, Hand of Justice. Now this one, I think a lot of people agree needed to happen. The Dragon Den was obviously, for the price of the build, it was just way too strong. The damage was absolutely obscene. So what they've done here is, this used to have level 16 Holy Fire. Now it has level 12. Might not sound like a crazy nerf, but there's so many other things nerfing the Dragon Den as well. The percent buff that you get from Holy Fire and Salvation. And, guys, what was happening last season, multiple pallies in the same game One would run Holy Fire, one would run Salvation, one would run Conviction, and between that, like when you had that situation, it was just too strong altogether. And now they've heavily nerfed the damage increase that you get from running Holy Fire, Holy Light, um, Holy Freeze, which wasn't super used last season, but either way, I'll just call it out, not to ignore it. And even Salvation, the percent of damage increase that you got from all four of those auras has been nerfed. I think the Dragon Den is probably dead, especially in the early to mid season, because yeah, I mean, like, you need Hand of Justice, you need Dragon, all of them have Sur runes. It's a huge rune investment for probably something that is a shell of its old self. It's not going to be a super strong build next season. This one is another mind blowing buff to me. Death Cleaver specifically. I mean, the Death Cleaver is like the most feared melee weapon back in D2 for melee PvP. It's got the 66% deadly strike, the minus 33% target defense, which does work in PvP. And just as a quick digression, just because I always want to take opportunities to try to inform people about things that they might not know. Ignore target defense does not work in PvP, does not work on bosses. Minus percent target defense does work in both of those situations. So this item was already crazy. For Zealers, for instance, you only needed 20 more increased attack speed to hit your max breakpoint when you use Fanaticism. Like, this item is so strong already, and they wildly buffed the enhanced damage. In fact, I believe the top end enhanced damage used to be 280. Now that's the floor. And now the high end is 330. And they added minimum damage to it, which didn't exist on the weapon at all last season or throughout its entire history. Now you can get 30 min damage on this as well. This weapon is insane. If you get a 4 open socket corruption on something like this for PvP, you know what, guys? Look, I'm feeling it. I'm going to slam it. I'm going to get 4 open sockets right now. Okay, I got 2. I figured I might as well try. You know, I'm waiting for that day where I do something sweet on stream, where I slam an item and like I'm like, it happened. It didn't happen now, but either way, that kind of wraps up the changes that I think are important. Certainly, I have missed a handful, and you know, if you think that there's something super strong that I overlooked, please note it in the comments, and I'll pin it for anyone who watches this video. One last thing. Here's something interesting that happened. Balcatho's set got completely reworked and is now pretty damn good. And, you know, I think with these full sets, the full set bonuses are amazing. Like, first of all, you can read through that list there. But 2 to all skills, 200 D to D, 200 D to U, 25% crushing blow, 25% deadly strike, defense. Like, great overall buffs to the full set bonus. I'm just trying to read what else. So the weapons got added all res, which is pretty crazy. So all of these, I mean, this one received 20% deadly strike. I don't think it had that before. The poison damage is whatever, but it's actually kind of frowned upon in PvP. So I don't love that they added poison damage. Not to say anybody's going to use this in PvP, but maybe they would. Anyway, I digress. This has gotten a major buff, and one of the really cool things. Well, first of all, the sword was a mythical sword, which is basically completely useless. Now there's one Colossus sword, one Colossus blade. They do great damage. The full set bonus is awesome. Took me forever to craft this. By the way, not craft, but ID it. I literally have a graveyard of like 50 rings that it took me to get here. But anyway, I got it. Lowest roll possible. Awesome. But anyway, BK set has been buffed. And guys, when you look at the set, it is what it is. But when you think about this set with good corruptions, I mean, this can have 6 open sockets. This can have 6 open sockets. So there's a lot that you can do with this build, and I can't wait to see the first full BK set barb that just looks absolutely insane. I'm really looking forward to that. Anyways, guys, I'm going to close it out here. Those are the changes that I think matter. Again, if you have a differing opinion, please leave it in the comment, because I'm sure there's something I've overlooked. The changes, the patch notes are just so long. I'm even just seeing right now, looking at my patch notes right now, even Leviathan went from 15 to 25% PDR to 20 to 30. Again, ceiling and floor both moved in the right direction. So a lot of buffs, and guys, can't wait to really start playing with this stuff in season 2. Beta is beta, and I'm playing a lot by myself and all that kind of stuff. Can't wait to do some Players 8 maps, see what interesting stuff people come out with, and yeah, all told, just really excited for the new season. Can't wait to play with you guys. Okay, cheers.